So yes, that was one of the reasons why I didn't post, back in, I don't even know. I don't remember. Um, the one I brought all the camera equipment out. I brought this, that, the other thing. I just didn't ended up. I ended up not recording that because I was just so sour from all the stuff that was going on in my personal life as far as trying to get my house fixed, that I didn't post anything because it showed a lot. And then I ended up going to Kootenai River Road again. One of the places I've been in my previous videos, and the reason I didn't go there, I didn't film there, was because that was a really magical experience. I ended up finding a super awesome beach that's like that nobody ended up coming. Nobody was around, and it was really beautiful. There was a thunderstorm one night, and over the mountains, and I just watched it. And I not that I don't enjoy filming, but there are some times where it's just like this, it detracts from all the enjoyment that I get out of camping, and that's what this is ultimately about for me. Is just getting back to center, getting back to zen, just enjoying it. And I'm not going to take it as seriously as I was in the first videos. This is about enjoying nature and about being out, by yourself, and figuring it out. That's why I don't have a cell phone out here. My cell phone's in the car. It's powered off, but it's charged. I don't have cell phone service out here anyway, which is why I have a radio. I don't know if you can. Maybe you can see it. Maybe you can. Anyway, I have a radio, and that's just what I need to get myself out of situations. But that's just it. Just enjoying it. So then the next trip that I took, where's the next trip that I took? Oh, I went on a hammock camping trip with a buddy of mine, and we went up to a mountain lake that was, I don't know, I don't remember the elevation, but I just remember, it was a 4.5 mile, 4.5 mile hike, and the last 2 miles of it were like a steep incline. And with that one, I packed super light. I wasn't looking to film anything. That was just an enjoyable trip. It was only a day. We cannonballed up there. We set up camp. We had 5 or 6 hours left of sunlight left. So we ended up going fishing, and there's a funny story about that. So we decided that we were gonna have a fish dinner that night. That was our goal. So we got up there, cannonballed up there, and I'll tell you what, that was a hike. That was a hike. Shout out to my buddies from Idaho, who I went on that Fault Lake trip with. It was just like that, only just a little bit shorter. Not a little bit shorter. It was decently shorter. But man, oh man, it was an uphill struggle. And I'm not in the best shape these days. I used to be, but that was a rough go. So anyway, all that aside, so we get up there, we set up camp, and I didn't bring any camera equipment because that's just another it's 5-6 pounds that I just didn't want to carry. So we get up there, camp set up, we go fishing, and I'm not catching anything, and my buddy's catching all these what was it? It was rainbow trout. It was rainbow trout. He caught a bunch of rainbow trout. I'm like, man, what's going on? Same setup with our fishing lines, this, very similar at least. So he looks at me, he goes, "Oh man, you're not catching any fish." I'm like, yeah. That's real funny, man. He's like, "Well, use mine." So I ended up using his setup, and we ended up catching a bunch of lake trout. Or no, I keep saying lake trout. It was rainbow trout. So basically, I'm like, okay, I want to keep this one. He's like, okay, great. So that was the whole plan. I had brought stuff around a fish dinner because I had been told that this lake had all these rainbow trout. And it won't be hard to catch a rainbow trout. So I caught, man, I don't know. I caught a bunch, but I was like, you know what? I want to find a big one. I don't want to eat these little guys. Whatever. So I threw back a bunch, and finally I find the fish that I want. Decent sized fish, put up a fight. It was like, oh, this is great. I was like, I want this fish. So I take the fish, or I'm sorry, I grab the line as the fish is right up on the bank. I grab the line, I get ready to pull the hook out. He spits it out, and off he goes. I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. So my friend is laughing. He thinks it's just the funniest thing in the world. I'm like, ha ha ha, real funny. So he goes and he casts. He catches a decent sized one, and I look at him and I say, okay, I will take that one. You can get the next bigger one. He says, okay. So he picks it up, he takes the hook out, and it falls right out of his hands and back into the lake. I am laughing so hard at this point that he looks at me like, why didn't you help? And I told him, I said, man, I would have helped you, but I was too busy laughing. So that was the next trip. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So yeah, there's been 3 trips that I haven't videoed. There's 3 trips that I did video, and so basically over the last year I've camped 7 or 8 out of the last 10 months. I think it's 7. I think 7 times out of the last 10 months. But I haven't videoed them. Just because, like I said, I just haven't wanted to either carry the camera equipment or, pick your poison. So, but this time around, I decided that, because like I said, I've been hearing from a lot of people, hey, your videos are actually interesting. I don't know if it's the same for everybody else listening, but I just don't feel like, what I'm doing is as interesting as the next guy. But I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I enjoy just getting out here. So basically, right now, we're at a camp spot about 30 miles from where I live, and they were calling for wind and rain and snow at night, and so I just decided to do the whole hot tent thing. I've been hammock camping, and hammock camping is a great thing if you're looking for something super light. If you're looking for a light way to go, man, I highly, highly, highly recommend hammock camping. It's the one thing that I did learn when I was out on Kootenai River Road. Granted, it was June, so it should have been warm at night. But once those breezes get to going, it gets cold at night. So I just had a little flimsy blanket. And I was like, this will be fine. It was not fine. I spent a lot of the night super cold. So at that point, I ended up buying not an air mattress, but like an air pad sort of thing, and off of Amazon. And boy, I'll tell you what, that's where it's at right there. It's big enough that you can lie in the center and it kind of folds around you, so you have that insulation, and that's really nice. But so yeah, that was why I didn't videotape those last trips. But one of the big things that's happened to me recently is I ended up getting the corona for the second time. And let me tell you, this time around, it was no joke. The first time it was, is this the best you got? Boy, it sure proved itself the second time around. This time around, so I had it in the beginning part of October. My wife came home and it's like, I don't feel that great. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And progressively things started to get worse for her. I'm like, okay, having it the first time, I didn't really take it seriously, I'll be honest. But then she's saying some things like, okay, look, you need to take a corona test. So she takes the corona test, and instantly it pops positive. I'm like, wow, okay. So I call my work. I say, hey, here's what's going on. Corey got the corona. I don't know what to do. They're like, all right, well, if you start to feel bad, don't come in. All right, fine. So I started to feel off. I'm like, whatever. So or not whatever. I called in. I'm like, hey, I'm feeling off. I don't know what to do. They're like, all right, take time off. Cool. So I take time off. Well, I take a test. It comes back negative. I'm like, that's really weird. Take another test the next day. It comes back negative. I took 3 tests. Oh, no, 4 tests. Took a test the next day. Came back negative. Took a test. So I go back into work let's see here. So she came back positive on a Friday. I went back in that Tuesday. I said, you know what? I'm popping negative. I'm going to come back into work. I'm tired of sitting around doing nothing. So I go back into work that Tuesday, and I'm like, wow, I really don't feel good. towards the end of the day, I'm like, wow, I really don't feel good. Well, there was a video of me that was taken, and you could actually hear me coughing and wheezing, and I didn't realize it. I didn't realize what was going on. So I'm like, whatever. Well, I ended up having that weekend off. So I'm sorry, it was a Thursday. Yeah, it was a Thursday. I had that weekend off. I was like, well, whatever. I'll suck it up and I'll be fine. I don't have the corona obviously because I've taken so many tests. There's just no way. So I get home. I get off work. I get home. I'm like, boy, I could really use some sleep. So I fall asleep. I slept for 12 hours. And for those of you so those are my subscribers that know me, man. If I could sleep for 8 hours, that's a win. Like, sleep eludes me a lot. It just is what it is. Either my mind's going or this, that, the other. So I slept for 12 hours, and I woke up and I was like, wow, I can't sort anything out right now. Like, I should take a test. Took a test, it was negative. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. So I go out, I do whatever I'm doing. I come back, 15 minutes later, and it is blue. I'm like, oh, okay, that explains it. So that Friday afternoon, things really started to hit hard, like really hard. Like that Friday afternoon, I got a fever of like 102. My muscles were just absolutely on fire. My skin, it felt like pinpricks. When you're sick, when your skin feels like that. I couldn't add two and two. I was so messed up. So I was like, okay, this is the Rona, this is the Corona. I'm gonna stay in the basement. So I ended up staying in the basement, and that Friday night, I had the heater on, I had blankets on, and my wife, who was actually getting better at that point, came downstairs. She's like, it's like 80 degrees in here. I'm like, no, it's freezing in here. She's like, oh, you are messed up. So yes, I ended up running into an issue where I couldn't get fluids in. So I called a buddy of mine, and I was like, hey man, look, here's what's going on. I got the Rona. I need a favor. I am familiar with IVs through the military. I went to CLS. I assisted my medic when I was, in Iraq, and I'm very familiar with IVs. So I call him up. He's an EMT. I'm like, hey man, look. I said, I need an IV. I said, I don't even know if it's legal, but I'm telling you, I need an IV. He's like, oh no, they're illegal. He's like, I'll be by, I'll be by. So he's like, I'll be by and I'll give you one. I'm like, really? It's that easy? He's like, yeah, it's that easy. I'm like, okay, cool, man. I was like, that kind of saves some issue, kind of saves me. So he comes. Mind you, at this point, I'm weak. My brain is just in an absolute fog. My joints are just killing me. I have a fever. I'm down for the count. So I call. He shows up. He gives me the IV, and not immediately, but about an hour later, he goes, "Hey, listen, man. Here's the thing about IVs. The slower they go, the better hydrated you'll be, and you won't just piss it all out." I was like, okay. So prior to this, being in the military, I know that the way you can judge your hydration is by how much, what color your urine is. So with this point, it was like a gold to like super, super, super yellow. So he shows up, I get the IV. For the first time, I let it go for an hour. Like I had it on like a drip every couple of seconds just because I didn't want it to all just, I don't want to, he goes, listen, man, the longer it takes, the more hydrated you'll be, and the less chance you'll have of urinating it out. I was like, okay, cool. Super slow. So about an hour later, my lips aren't chapped anymore. My head doesn't hurt anymore. It was like a whole different level. So by day three, I was doing better, but by day 4, the fever had broken, this, that, the other thing, but man, I was so tired all the time. Like I couldn't even think straight. That was absolutely rough. So I have a newfound respect for the Corona. It's no joke. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on in my life, other than working and training the new person. And
Obviously, Ivy over here, you know, who's finally decided to take a nap. It must be warm enough in here. It's only probably, what, 150, 160 degrees in here? All right, I'll catch up with you guys here in a little bit.